I'd like to kind of address the Colonel's comments a little bit more. I'm going to deviate from I'm sorry. My name is CJ Grisham. I represent Texas Gun Rights. I am in favor of SB 72. So I'm also a near absolutist when it comes to private property rights, and I don't think in any way that this undermines those. The bill is also very specific just to businesses. This is actually a small business protection bill because if they don't post the signs, and there's numerous reasons why a business would not want to do that. One of those is, of course, if it's a small business, they don't have that kind of retail space to put up what's required for the signage necessarily. But if they do put up the signs, the problem is that, especially in our small rural communities, a lot of people don't have a choice. You know, there's the argument that, hey, if you don't like the signs, shop somewhere else. Well, that's really good if you live in Austin, if you live in San Antonio, if you live in Houston, you have that ability. But if you're somewhere where you're the only place that you can shop for groceries is your local H-E-B, and that's it, or the Walmart superstore, and those buildings put up those signs, you have to make a choice here between surrendering your First Amendment right or your Second Amendment right or going hungry. But what this does is it protects anyone that if you don't put up these signs, and the people that go in there, if you do put up the signs and something happens to you, then you've got a recourse there because there is a duty under the law of protection in many cases. When you go somewhere and there's a gross deviation from standards, for example, there's a reason why people sue when they slip on a carton of eggs that fell on in the aisle and nobody cleaned it up in a reasonable time. This is the same thing. If you put up signs and someone goes in there for whatever reason, I mean, a lot of times it might be because your family's in town or you're going to a work event and this is where the work event has been scheduled, and you go there and you realize, well, crap, now there's a sign there. What do I do? Do I put my job first or do I put my safety first? And you have to assume as a citizen in the state of Texas that when you go into one of these businesses, the reason that we're posting this is because we got your back. We've got security. We've got, like when I walk into a courthouse, I'm not worried I got to leave my gun somewhere else. I'm not going to say where I leave it. I'm not worried I leave my gun somewhere else because there's plenty of deputies in there that if something happens, the likelihood of me being protected is pretty high. But what am I supposed to do if I'm forced to disarm? And again, I don't think this is a choice in many cases because depending on the circumstances, I don't have a choice to go to McDonald's versus Burger King because one of the two has a sign up. It's also important when it comes to property rights that we understand that property rights are not uniform and they're not absolute because you've got that bundle of sticks. There's what's called the right of control. That right of control is a right that it's shared between the property owner and the government because they have to meet OSHA standards. They have to meet certain building code standards. They have to meet all of these kinds of things. So businesses are very frequently regulated anyway. What this does is now we're sort of saying that, hey, if you put these signs up, which you have a complete right to do, just know if something happens, because mass shootings and all these shootings are happening in places that put up signs or have laws that say you can't carry in there, you're increasing my risk just to survive, just to live, just to engage in business. And so I really think this is kind of a protection because in some ways, I think that a lot of these businesses, well, actually, I know this for a fact because I talk to them. They're worried about the inverse. If I don't put up signs and somebody carries a gun in here and they hurt somebody, I'm liable. And I know that we've already passed the bill to fix that aspect of it, but like I think it was you, Senator Hughes, said that this is the other side of the coin. That's exactly what this does, is it does the exact opposite, where if you do put up the signs, you're actually putting up a little bit more liability if something happens. And again, the likelihood of that happening is very low anyway, but this protects those businesses and it protects the patrons who really don't have a choice about where to go. And with that, and subject to your questions, Texas Gun Rights wholeheartedly supports this bill. We thank Senator Hall for bringing it up. And if you have any questions, I'd be willing to entertain them. I do Second Amendment law for a living, so.
Thanks for your testimony. Senator Birdwell.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, CJ. How does the bill, I only go into these establishments every once in a great while, but the 51% establishment that doesn't, if I recall, the 51% sign and the 30-6 sign are not congruent.
They're
So
completely
how would it,
separate.
right, so how would this bill affect those establishments that have to post the 51% sign?
The way that this bill, the way I read this bill, it does not affect it at all. If you're a 51% establishment, that's a requirement to put up. It's not a choice. That's the government telling you to do something. This does not create liability for having a 51% sign. You're not going to have businesses going, well, I guess I'm not going to sell alcohol anymore.
But if, God forbid, something happened in that 51%, does this apply in the sense of a civil action? It sounds like it's not, it doesn't.
This bill would not. It would not apply to 51% signs at all. Now, where I think, well, I will just tell you straight outright, if I were a defense attorney on a case that was brought under this and the circumstances wasn't a 30-6 or 30-7 sign, but it was a 51% sign, if I'm the guy that is, and I wouldn't take this case because it's just nonsense, but if I were the guy that was hired to sue because there was a 51% sign up and something happened to me, I wouldn't, I don't think I would legally have an ethical, I sit here and say ethics and attorney in the same sentence, which is weird. But I don't see an ethical attorney taking that case because that's not what this bill does on a 51% sign, unless, now I'll tell you this part. There are businesses, if a guy comes to me and says this was a 51%, I wasn't allowed to carry my gun in there, so I went in there, something happened to me, and then I go and I look on the TABC website that the only reason they put up that 51% was because they were trying to keep guns out. Well, that's fraud because they're not a 51% establishment. And I believe I could use that sign as evidence that absent that sign that wasn't required by law because it's not a 51% establishment, then I'd probably have, I don't think under this bill I'd have a right of action, but I'd probably still have a civil right of action. It just, this bill wouldn't affect it.
Okay. I know the bill doesn't affect the private relationship. You attend a Super Bowl party at a buddy's house, 20 folks are there, something tragic happens. This bill doesn't contemplate it, but I think it sets the precedent for how we might contemplate that. Would you agree with that statement? It sets the precedent for contemplating that?
Respectfully, Colonel, I would not. I would not agree with that. This bill specifically deals with businesses.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that the precedent being set is that, okay, we're doing this for businesses. Look, as I'm listening, learning, and look, I'm supportive of the bill. I'm just trying to think through, okay, if based upon what we do here, will there be a future ask on, I go to somebody's house, I'm invited to go, something tragic happens, do I now have a civil cause of action? Will this be stated as the precedent to generate that law? That's what I'm trying to think through of.
Right. And so first I would ask you to pass this bill into law and let's see. But second,
I
don't
get that.
I don't see that happening, and I'll tell you why. Because friends don't let friends drive without a gun.
Yeah.
So if you're going to a Super Bowl party at a friend's house that doesn't allow guns over there, he shouldn't be your friend. Yeah. That's my position on that. Well. But I don't see that because there is a major difference between, and I granted a business is a private property as well to a degree.
But it's open to the public the way your home is not.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It's open to the public. And I can just as easily watch the Super Bowl in my home as I can going next door where there's no guns allowed. Yeah. But I can't just as easily in some of these places go shopping somewhere and get a particular item, like a car. Some places only have one car dealership in the entire city. So I don't see this jumping, and I will tell you straight up, if a bill is ever brought up, and I'm about as pro-gun as you can get, but I also believe in private property rights. If there's a bill that's brought up that says that you have to force me in my home, I don't like HOAs, much less the government telling me what I can do in my home. Yeah. So I guarantee you that if that slippery slope argument ever does exist, we would probably be on the right side of that argument.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the reason for my exploratory questions, because you've got to protect our constitutional rights all require protection equally. And so that's why I'm trying to, just with my exploratory questions, make sure that, okay, what are we doing here? And as it relates to private property owner and the individual citizen that may choose to patronize that business. Because it's not exactly germane, but it is frustrating to have watched the previous 4 years and the hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans that have been injured by the willful allowance of individuals into this country that not only didn't come here lawfully, but two are fugitives from their own country. And those individuals that are now harmed because of sovereign immunity don't have the ability to. And so obviously in a business environment, you don't have a sovereign immunity case, but for those reasons, I certainly understand and support the concept of, hey, I'm patronizing your business, you owe me the safety and security related to that. But I'm just trying to make sure that have we explored all aspects of the private property aspect as well, so.
Absolutely. And when I was looking at this bill and I'm trying to weigh when we were discussing it as to how are we going to stand on it and private property rights, because we believe in those as well. We're not just a Second Amendment organization. We're a civil rights organization with a focus on the Second Amendment rights.
Right.
And private property rights play a very big part in that. I think the biggest issue here is what we really need to do, because you mentioned the last 4 years, is change this mindset that the only safe place is a gun-free place.
Oh, yeah. People have a nasty
and we've got
habit.
to continue finding ways to disarm people, and that will just make us all safer.
Right. People have a nasty habit of getting dead in gun-free zones.
Right. So that's the mindset that we've got to fix, is just that making you a victim doesn't make you safer.
Right. But the question of who decides what the gun-free zone is, because if it's the property owner that wants that,
right,
you still got to protect that, whether it's a individual, the small mom and pop, or the corporate, if a Starbucks wants every store to be, if it's a corporate decision, that's still their decision to do so. And I just wanted to make, in reading the bill, I wanted to make sure that we're not taking that choice from the business owner. And the Senator, Chairman explained that very well. So I appreciate it, CJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.